Okay, so today I've been working on the rear frame rails, trying to get those ready to go underneath the floor, the trunk floor. And so I did some welding on the other side of this to get that braced up in there, and then I welded through these a little bit and then put a bead down on the inside as well, just to kind of lock in this tab a little better. The gaps aren't perfect on that, so it leaves a little bit of a gap. I initially tried to drill holes. Well, I drilled holes from the inside of the frame through, and then figured I would back weld it down through this gap here, but it really doesn't work well. I don't really recommend it, just because the angle of the MIG gun, you really can't get straight on, so you're really at a pretty hard angle, especially for the lower hole that I had down here. The upper one, not so bad. The bottom one, it gets really steep angle, so it's a little more of a challenge to fill the actual hole when you're done. Trying to get it, so I had to do a little bit of sanding on that, obviously, because it kind of left a little bit of a turd on some of them. So I've got those welded up on each side, which pretty much locks in the rest of this frame as far as the location of the two rails, because I had welded the top half basically underneath here. You can see there's some beads along that flange that extends over top of the rail, and I did that on both sides, along with putting a little bead, or a little spot weld, sorry for the light on there, up inside there on the flange as well. So I've got that pretty much locked down. It didn't really affect my dimensions. I came across and measured, from the holes and diagonals and all that stuff. So it still seems to be where it was. So I guess, been lucky in that I've got it to set up in that position. What I did was I took those pieces and stuck them on I flipped the floor over, stuck them on the bottom, got all the dimensions right, basically tramming from corner to corner on the locator holes according to the manual. And then once I got everything locked down with vice grips, 20 sets of vice grips or something on there, then I started tacking and then working into a little more welding, just so it wouldn't move, and it kept it tight to it the whole time. And then I just left it that way so it could cool off while it was still connected to all that, to see if I could minimize the amount of warpage. I also kind of peened it a little bit with the hammer around the flanges, just to release any stress that might have been there, just to keep it nice and flat, or nice, so it wouldn't twist when I got it done. And then I basically marked out on the bottom of the floor where all the holes were going to be located for welding that back in, and then I went about drilling 36 holes per side, so 2 rows of 18. No, I'm sorry, 2 rows of 36. Sorry, so I think I can't do math. Anyway, probably public school math here. Sorry. Anyway, I think it was like 72 holes total. But so I got that, so that's all drilled, and then I cleaned up. Clean the paint off at the top side where I'm going to be welding, and I also lightly cleaned the bottom, so I didn't go crazy with it. I didn't do nearly as large of an area as some of these where they're kind of cleaned up. I only went probably a 1/16 of an inch around it, because what I'm hoping is that as I weld it, yes, it'll burn a little bit of the paint that's in that seam, but it won't necessarily suck it into the weld. So that way I can have as much actual electrocoating or whatever this stuff is, this kind of paint, on the bottom, like in between the frame rail and that. I may hit it with some weld through primer anyway. I just don't really want the weld through primer to be inside the holes, actually on that flange, on the edge of the hole, because I don't think it welds as well as just bare metal, obviously. So I've got that pretty much done. I had to take off the rear, the bumper brackets, just because the tabs are too tall. So these tabs that they have on there are 2 and like 3/8 tall, which won't go into that hole. Sorry, let me get the camera in the right spot here. They're not going to go in that gap ever. So without some serious grinding, and at that point I said there's no real reason to mess with it. So I just took those off, and I'll be replacing those with another set that I have that have pretty much the correct joggle in the side of them. So these should actually go into that opening properly. They don't hang up on the edge like the other ones do. So and then it also gives you that little bit of a cut out, that little flange right there. Gives you the little rise up to go over the edge if there happens to be a mismatch on that dimension. So I think that'll work. So what I'm going to do now is lift the pan back up, clamp it at all the on the wheel wells, clamp it on the back tail panel all the way across, and then that's pretty much it for the clamping. And then once I get it held up in place and I know it's in the right spot, then I'm going to take this frame, position it underneath there, lift it up into position, tuck it into the back side of this the tail panel, because it has to go behind that flange. Tuck it up inside there, and then see if I can get this thing to push back up into place. Make sure everything's still aligned like it was last time I had it in there. And as long as that's the case, then I'll do some marking through those holes. So I'll take a Sharpie, like a gray, silver Sharpie or something, and just kind of dot all those holes, which the dots will then come out on this, and then I'll take it back down and I'll just clean the paint just in those areas where that bead's going to be, where the little spot weld's going to be. And then once that's done, then I'll be taking the panel back out, dropping the floor back out of it again, and then I'm going to start drilling out. Well, I got to remove this the trunk spring and everything first, trunk lid spring part first. But once I get that out of the way, I'm going to start breaking some of these welds free. So start breaking them free. Leave a maybe 4, 2 in the back, 2 in the front. I'll just kind of leave a few of them behind, because when I get done putting those up in there, I'm not actually going to weld it to the wheel wells. I'm replacing the wheel wells. So that way I don't have to climb inside the car, try to drill all this stuff out later on. They'll already be kind of, most of them will be removed, but there'll be enough there just to keep it, locationally where it's supposed to be. I mean, obviously it's still connected to the quarter panel, so it's not like it's going anywhere, but I don't want it to move around too much. So I'll do that. And then when I put it back in, I'll weld it to the tail panel across first, and then, do those spots. And then, then obviously once I have, when I'm putting it back in, I'll have the rear torque boxes and everything welded back in, and then that'll have the rear frame rails will be in the right place. I can just weld the floor to that, and then it should never go anywhere. So that way that'll end up being attached to my tail panel, and then eventually when I do the quarters, I'll just do one quarter at a time. Take one off, do that whole thing, and then flip to the other side and do the other. So that's the basic plan. Can't think of anything else offhand. So, and that's, I guess, my update for today. All right, thanks.